Major League Pickleball is back, and we've got a lot to look forward to. We'll take you through all the new rule changes in 2025.
And the general managers, they've got their hands full. They all have to cut a player. They're going to be making trades, and they got to get ready for the free agency draft. We'll have all those details for you.
And make sure you watch until the end for the biggest update of them all. That's all next, coming up on Inside Major League Pickleball. Welcome to Inside Major League Pickleball, your stop for all things MLP. I'm Will Doughton, bringing you a special off-season update episode alongside Dave Fleming. Dave, it's been a minute, but it feels great to be back here at the desk talking pickleball.
I love talking Major League Pickleball. I love the changes. I can't wait to share those with everybody that just loves the excitement and enthusiasm of Major League Pickleball. Let's get into it.
We're going to start off with the premier level teams. You see the teams there. There are now 16 teams in 2025 compared to just 12 last year. The reason for that, Dave, is that the top 4 challenger teams in 2024 were promoted to the premier level. Those squads are the Atlanta Bouncers, the Chicago Slice, Miami Pickleball Club, and the SoCal Hard Eights. Now, Dave, there's also another big change coming just to the premier level teams, and that has to do with roster size. Last year, each team had 4 members. This year, each premier team has 6 members. As a GM yourself, can you talk about the tactical implications of that from a roster management perspective?
Yeah, it's going to be wild to see how each team deals with that, because I think there's a couple of ways you can look at this. First of all, across the board, if you have an injury, you're going to be able to pull somebody from your actual team. They're going to know how you play, the things that are strengths and weaknesses of the players. So that's big. You're not going to just be pulling from the alternates. Secondly, I would expect teams to look for signed players in their geography and try and build up the team. So it won't be surprising to me at all to see if that's taken. And then finally, do you choose for the now or for the future? Do you want a veteran that you think could help you in a pinch, or do you want somebody that's maybe down the list a little bit but has upside? So it's going to be interesting to see how the general managers treat those extra spots.
And we'll get to take a look at the challenger teams as well. Of course, there were 10 challenger teams last year, now just 6. So can't wait to see just how any new names that kind of come into that challenger level field, how they fare against playing a smaller pool of competition.
Indeed, and I think this is your opportunity. We've seen players rise up in challenger, and that springboards them forward, all the way up to and including people like Christian Alshon, who won a challenger title and is now one of the best players in the world. So a lot of this is just give me an opportunity and let me show you what I can do, and this is the place to do it.
Well, Dave, now we're going to hop into the details, the nitty-gritty, if you will, looking at player eligibility. So last year when we had the draft, teams, they drafted their squads with the assumption that they could keep them for multiple seasons, right? And so this is where player eligibility comes in. To be able to keep a player from the 2024 season, there are 3 things that have to happen. You have to be one of the 88 originally drafted players on either a premier or challenger level roster. You have to have ended 2024 on a team roster. And this is the big one. You have to be under a UPA contract, Dave. Lot of implications from that. Take me through it.
Yeah, I think the big thing here is, and we'll talk about this throughout the show, is if you don't have a contract, you can't play, you can't be signed just to play. So there are teams coming up from the list that you just mentioned. The Chicago Slice don't have any players on their roster right now, for example. So how do you reconcile that? We'll talk about how they can make their team coming up here. So those are the rules. So the general managers, the coaches, the owners really have to dig into the available player list. I know it's growing and being added to literally up to and right up to the date that the draft will take place. So that's the rules. Got to live within them, but you got to make what's best for your squad. And I think we saw a variety of ways. You can go young, you can go old. But this is the pool. You can't just pull the hotshot kid from the club in your city. Unless they get signed, they can't play.
And to your point, Dave, there's a lot that goes into managing these rosters. One thing that makes it especially difficult is now teams have to drop players. So here's how it is. By February 16th, every team must drop at least one player. So how do you think that's going to affect the landscape going into this year?
Big time. I mean, some teams are probably happy to drop a player because it just didn't work out last year. Others are going to have a hard time, and we'll get into some of that. And the other thing that is open right now is the trade window. So the trades are going to be flying because one team's trash might be another team's treasure just by the fit, whether the personalities worked out, whether you have a left side player and then you're like, I thought she could play the left side, she can't, or whatever those dynamics may be. So I would expect multiple trades to happen before the free agency window closes and we can have that draft. So this is going to be wild over the next, I would say, 2 weeks to see who will pull the trigger. There are going to be multiple team trades. This is going to be fun to watch.
And it's also going to be fun to watch some notable free agents, what happens with these players. We've got 4 with Quang Duong of the Texas Rangers, Donald Young with the Florida Smash, Michael Lloyd with the Frisco Pandas, and of course, Jeannie Bouchard with the Utah Black Diamonds. Dave, all 4 of these players, they are ineligible to be kept because they were not drafted, not one of those 88 players drafted in 2024. So, I mean, someone like Quang Duong, right? You know, he proved that he's able to compete at the premier level. He will be a hot commodity come the free agency draft, which we'll talk about in a little bit.
He sure will, and I think the way I see it with the 4 you mentioned is, what do you want as a general manager? Everybody's going to want Q if you dropped a guy. So that's the difference here is who is it? And then again, much like the draft last year, does the team that grabs that first pick, which gender do they want is a massive thing here because you might want the second pick, but you're like, oh, I think I'm okay here because they're going to go after Q, for example. So those 4 are interesting from that standpoint. Michael Lloyd really caught fire at the end of the year. More known for his singles, is a solid doubles player. Are you willing to bet on the upside there? Donald Young is the special player here for me beyond what Q has obviously done because of the potential. He's done with tennis. He is ready to go. He's even building an indoor pickleball facility south of Atlanta. So Donald Young is going to be rocking. I think his ascent is just barely getting started. So we talked about the 5th and 6th roster spots. He has to be one of those in Premier, has to be. And then Jeannie, come on. She's getting better. She just beat Brooke Buckner in singles. She is committed to this. She has massive upside from a reach perspective, from a building a fan base perspective. Maybe she's a for sure premier player from this is what's important to us.
And again, with 6 roster spots, just that premier talent pool has got to be so deep now, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, you have these players who maybe last year they would not have been on a premier roster. This year they get that chance. And, it, you know, even if you're not playing in those premier matches, you also have this chance to, you know, in rec games and practice games,
yes,
right, with your teammates, you're getting a lot of really high quality reps that's only going to help your development as a player. So I think that 6-person roster, along with these, you know, notable free agents and a ton of other free agents who we'll talk about shortly, it's going to completely help create more depth at that top of the program, which I think is only going to benefit the sport.
Yeah, because I talk a lot about, and my own journey in pro pickleball was you got to get in the cool kids club. And the way you get in there is by playing well, but it also is by practicing well, and your name gets floated out. You're like, man, I can't beat him or her in a rec game. Then people hear about that, want to try him out, then you get to maybe a better partner than you thought on the Carvana PPA Tour side of this. So this is really important to be on a premier team for so many reasons.
Now to the free agency drafts, 2 of the biggest days of the season, Dave,
yes,
and they're coming up in early March, but both the premier level and challenger level drafts are going to be run through a dynamic bidding process. We saw this last year with the premier draft, but kind of take us through how that works, take us through the structure.
So this is going to be wild because the first pick, it's not like the NFL where the worst team, boom, you get the first pick. The Dallas Flash, who just won it, could get the first pick because it is an auction for the slot. It's not for a player. It's not like we put a player up for bid. It's that draft position. And then The boys and ladies are in the room just fighting over that, and they're fighting with real dollars here to get there. So we mentioned Q, all the players that get cut from the one drop that we talked about. There are going to be a limited supply of the high-end players from the good teams that had to cut somebody. So there's going to be a race to that, and all that means is that the register is going to keep ringing, because all it takes is two to watch that go up and up. And then once you win the auction, usually you get to enjoy it. You got 2 minutes to figure out who you're going to draft. So I hope if you're bidding aggressively, you know exactly who you are trying to get.
You know, they've made movies about being in the NFL war rooms, the
Yeah.
draft rooms. We need something about the MLP draft rooms, especially as, you know, players are dropped and kept, and everything that goes into making that decision. Cannot wait for that. We're going to have that premier draft on March 2nd. The challenger level draft taking place the next day on March 3rd. So much to look forward to. And we'll get to see a lot of these players, you know, how they perform on the PPA tour as that season starts as well. So GMs will have a better idea of whether this player's stock is rising or if they're kind of neutralizing out at that point.
Yeah, and I'm fired up. We're going to be doing the premier draft from Tennis Channel's studio. So myself, we're going to have Steve Weissman, who hosts Tennis Channel Live, being the master of ceremonies and that, and me and Matt Manassi will be breaking down all the picks. So this is a huge day for not just Major League Pickleball, but for all the fans throughout the country.
You got the dream team out there in
Absolutely.
California, Dave.
It's going to be great.
So let's kind of dive in here, look at some specific scenarios for what could happen during free agency, during these drafts. Let's start off with the 2024 Premier Level champions, the Dallas Flash. How do you think free agency is going to work out for them? Do you think they make a trade? Who do you think they drop in the draft?
Yeah, so this is the fascinating couple of teams here, because we love the continuity that we have now in Major League Pickleball. It wasn't there. All the prior years, everybody got thrown back in the pool, and there was another draft. I had people yelling at me, how on earth did you cut Ben Johns? You're the worst general manager ever. No, that was the rules. But it also created the confusion that those conversations had. So now teams can start to build that connection with not just the players and the uniforms, but the location. The geography matters. These teams want to build a foothold in each of the cities. That's why the events are going to be all held at Major League Pickleball cities as well. So that is so important that we're going to have that. But you could only keep 3 of the 4. So Dallas Flash would love to run it back. Obviously, they're phenomenal. They're the champions, well earned. J-Dub and Georgia aren't going anywhere. Okay, let's be clear. Tyra is playing fantastic right now, and the pool of women is a little shallower than the pool of men. So are they going to have to cut Augie? Gladiator Ga is going to have to be cut? Maybe so, but that's probably what they're looking at.
And then you look at St. Louis as well. I mean, there is no win-win scenario, right? You've got to cut somebody. St. Louis kind of in a similar boat, right? You know, Captain Anna Bright, no question that you're not dropping her. You've also got the talented teenagers, Hayden Patrick, Gabe Tardio, and then Kate Fahey,
yes.
Right? Someone who caught fire in singles, only continues to improve in doubles. I mean, I would not want to be in that chair. Those are decisions that I do not want to make.
Yeah, and I think, again, it comes down to 2 things here. Number one, do you trust the pool of men more than women? But also, because it's not the worst guaranteed for those top spots, maybe we just go buy it. Let's just go get it. We love our shock players. Yeah, we came up. We still got on the medal stand. We got 3rd. But maybe we're just going to go get that first pick. We could cut any of the 4. It doesn't matter. I'm outbidding everybody. That could be your strategy. Now, there are financial implications for that. But I'm outbidding. We're having the same 4. And I'm keeping them, and that's the way. So you can not arrange it, but you can make sure of that just by keeping. We don't have the little cards with the numbers on them like at the cattle auction, but that is a way to solve that problem.
So Dave, can you give us any insight into what Carolina's going to do? Because I know you're heavily involved with that organization.
I have been, and I want to clarify some things with that. So thank you for bringing that up. with just the growth of this sport, I get pulled in so many different directions, and I also want to be a neutral party in the role that I have. So I am not going to be the general manager for Carolina anymore. I'm relinquishing that. I want to be able to be focused on the league as a whole, on the stories, on calling the action and all that. So I wish them well. The one thing I will say here, though, is there was a lot of discussion, obviously, about Ben and Colin aren't playing anymore. Well, that's on the Carvana PPA Tour side. They're both on Carolina. Could they stay together there? And maybe that's enough where it doesn't become this weight that they carried around all last year. So maybe after all, they will be found on the 20x44 several times wearing the Carolina blue. We'll see.
Well, that's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
Huge news there from Dave Fleming. From Carolina, thanks you for your service, of course.
And thank you.
Hey, we could see Ben and Colin again on a pickleball court in 2025. They said it was over at the Masters when they won that tournament. It was an awesome way for them to go out. But maybe we just need to wait a few months to see them playing together again. We'll see.
We'll see. It's not guaranteed, but it's out there.
The point still stands. Anything can happen in free agency. These drafts are going to be wild. Can't wait to see what trades happen as well before then.
Yeah, because I think that's the big part of this is, let me get to the best 3 I can get to. And if I know you're dropping somebody who's better than my worst, I'm going to make a deal. And people are also trying to get some money because they know they have an asset. I'll just sell you an asset, and I'll take your worst player back. I get some money, and I'm going to only cut them anyway. So this is one of those times where I think some of these players are really going to feel the way an NBA or NHL player feels when they get traded and all of a sudden you got to go play somewhere else, or even worse, in this case, you got cut and you didn't get picked back up. So the feelings and emotions of this and the having to make those calls and then receive those calls, this is going to be fascinating to watch because lives will be affected for all we've talked about those opportunities to showcase your skills.
That's inside the mind of a former MLP GM. Hey everyone, Will Doughton here with a breaking news update. We talked throughout this show about how we expected there to be a lot of trades before the free agency drafts, and we already have 2 that were announced right after we finished filming. Get this, they're both involving the same team, the New York Hustlers. New York is trading Jackie Kawamoto to the DC Pickleball team in exchange for Vivian Glosman and cash considerations. They're also sending the talented teenage lefty CJ Klinger to the Columbus Sliders in exchange for Riley Newman and cash considerations. These are the first 2 trades of the 2025 season, and there are sure to be more. We'll keep you updated on the latest. Cannot wait to get those insights. Can't wait to see what happens. We're going to switch gears. We've been in the details, been in the mud for quite a while here. Let's look just generally at the MLP season schedule. We've got 10 regular season events, and Dave, like you mentioned, each one taking place in an MLP team's host city. What an opportunity for the teams to really invest in their local markets.
No doubt about it. I love this change. So the big things with the schedule is it's in a compact window in the summer, and every one of those 10 events is being hosted. Columbus is hosting, Arizona's hosting, Orlando gets us started. And these teams can drive 2 things. Number one, their local fan base, because obviously the home team is playing, but also grow the sport as a whole in their backyard. So I want to get to the point where Squeeze Nation down there in Orlando is physically damaged the way Buffalo Bill and Washington Commander fans are damaged here today by their teams not taking that next step. And I think we're getting there. I think really seeing the fans gravitate to these players, and this is a chance for you to host an event and to showcase your squad in front of everybody. I think it's going to be fantastic.
I mean, look, you've got the flash mob here in Dallas. You need something comparable for every single team, right? That's what you want. So I think we're only going to continue to see that grow as we host more of these events as well. Each team will play at 5 of those events. And a little difference here, each team will play 25 total matches as compared to 23 last year. So still the same structure, points on the line every single match, but now it's 25 matches. So It's a long season, but like you mentioned, Dave, it's more compact. So you're going to have that PPA heavy time of the year, then MLP heavy time of the year. I think it's going to help players kind of separate those mental challenges from week to week.
And I think more importantly, it's going to help our wonderful fans follow each of those, because you're going to be all in on Major League Pickleball in the summer with a couple of PPAs sprinkled in there. So you're going to be able to follow the standings, track where the players are, and really get into, wow, okay, if Team A beats Team B, that is a big impact on where we are in the standings.
And so one thing that is staying the same is the mid-season tournament. We're going back to Grand Rapids, one of the best events of the year on the MLP schedule. That's going to be July 10th through July 13th, I believe right after the 7th regular season event, so still somewhat mid-season there. And we'll have separate Premier and Challenger level brackets, just like we did last year. But this time, Dave, standings points are up for grabs. First place gets 6 points, second gets 4, and third place gets 2 points. That's not an insignificant amount of points as the season goes on.
No, and I love that, because you want to be playing for something. Obviously, cash is king, but for the team, how is that? Because last year everybody's like, okay, hey, good for you, fives, and then you go back to the standings and nothing changed, even though we saw all those teams play. So it's not a head-to-head situation here, but it is an outcome situation here. So I love that, because the margins are going to be thin to get buys, which are wildly important in the standings, as we saw last year, and then obviously on top of that, just making the playoffs. So if you do well in the mid-season tournament, it's kind of like you got 2 extra wins added to your kitty there, and that may be the difference.
You said the magic word there, Dave, playoffs. Let's look at the playoff structure. The top 10 teams at the Premier level will make the playoffs. And get this, all 6 Challenger teams will advance to the playoffs as well. We've got 2 locations, just like we did last year. Rounds 1 and 2, San Diego, California.
Yes.
Then for the semifinals and finals, we're moving across the country.
Where are we going,
We're
Will?
going to New York,
Yes.
going to the Big Apple to see the best of the best fight for the trophy. I love this. You're traversing the whole country. You've got now 3 to 4 rounds for Premier and Challenger. And you're extending that 10 teams now for Premier. What are your thoughts on this playoff system?
Can't love it more. And I love the fact that we're getting to show the playoffs on both coasts. We're going to San Diego, and then we're going to raise a trophy and the confetti, and we had the best confetti of all time. I mean, it's still falling on Orlando on the Dallas Flash, I feel like. So Central Park gets a trophy? Come on, that's unbelievable. You're going to earn it, and what a great place to raise it. So love every bit of this.
All right, Dave. Are you ready? Are you ready?
I am ready.
You ready? Okay, because we have the biggest change coming to Major League Pickleball.
More than everything we've already
More than everything
Wow.
we've already talked about. This is huge. Comes down to match scoring. For doubles, we're going back to side-out scoring. No more rally scoring, Dave.
Wow. Yes, so here's the deal. All of our fans, and we love you, and we love how pickleball continues to grow across this country, are playing side-out scoring at home. So we're going to do what you guys are doing, and we're going to keep doing that. So instead of a game to 25 rally scoring, we're playing 1 game to 11, win by 2 side-out scoring. What do I think of this? I think it's great, and I think without the freeze and without rally scoring where literally you miss a serve, there's a point over there, I think the better team will win more often in these doubles matchups. It's going to be interesting, though, Will, to see. I know when people got tight and we got into 3-5 dinking on those freezes because everyone got so nervous. Well, is it going to be at 8-7 now? So because MLP is different, man. You got the owner 4 feet from you on the sideline. You got the crowd all packed in there around you, and you're playing for more than just yourself. You're playing, as they love to say, for the name on the front of the jersey, not the one on the back. And I like this, and I like it from a number of standpoints growing the game. From a wagering and gambling perspective, there's a lot of reasons to do this as well. So that's my take. What's yours?
Yeah, I mean, I get all the points. One thing that came to mind really as soon as I heard about the change was rally scoring is chaotic, right? And so there are players, Zane Navratil coming to mind, that really thrive off of that chaos. And he really seems to find his best stuff when, it's 23 all, 24, when you have to play to 30 instead of 25. And so I'm interested to see, he obviously brings a lot of value off the court as well, but for players like that who are great captains, who have that clutch gene, is that going to translate now that it's side-out scoring? It's a little bit slower paced set of scoring as well. I'm also interested to see how this benefits big servers, right? Because last year in rally scoring, if you miss a serve, you not only lose the serve, but you also forfeit a point to the other side. An important note as well, we are keeping rally scoring for the Dream Breakers.
Yes.
So even though it's bye-bye in doubles, we're still going to keep it. Keep the novelty of the Dream Breaker. One of the best parts about Major League Pickleball, in all honesty.
It is. And, everybody's like, well, why are you only doing most of it? Well, have you seen the college football, overtime, soccer, hockey goes to 3-on-3. So everybody has their fun little nuance to break a tie. We have a Dream Breaker, where dreams are broken and dreams are made. And 4 at a time, everything's the same. Freeze at 20, playing to 21. That'll be riveting, as it always is.
Let's take a look at the MLP calendar just to give you an idea of what we have coming up starting now from last week. The trade window 1, that's going to run through March 3rd, which is the date of the Challenger level draft. We've got the player drop deadline on February 16th. That premier free agency draft on March 2nd. Of course, the Challenger draft the very next day. And regular season event number 1 from Orlando, Florida, the USTA National Campus, April 24th through 27th. That's going to kick things off. Really no better place to kick off this season as the same location where we ended 2024.
Yeah, tremendous fans down there. They're going to be packed around that awesome stadium court again. And again, I will repeat, there are going to be lots of trades before we get there. And then you and I are going to get back to this desk and talk about who got cut and what does that mean as we look ahead to that draft, the free agency draft, the second for our friends in Premier and then the next day for Challenger. So there is so much going on over the next 4 to 6 weeks. I can't wait.
We're going to be with you every step of the way. That's going to do it for this off-season update episode of Inside Major League Pickleball. For Dave Fleming, I'm Will Doughton. Thanks so much for joining us, and keep up with Major League Pickleball on social media for all of the latest updates on trades, free agencies, and scheduling. We will see you on the court.
Peace.